Hello, this is part 2 in a series of videos that I'm making in the year 2023 on the meaning of Chiron. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at the birth charts of people. We're going to look at the results of the research and see how this works out in applying the ideas to the charts of people and also some additional database research that we've done. So in an evidence-based practice, we have to apply the ideas that we get from the research to see if they work. So one of the ways that we applied the ideas is we try it out with our clients. We also can just think of things like, what performer, like singer, can I think of who has this really powerful, charismatic voice and is not flamboyant? And you can research this. And Renata Baldi fits the description exactly. Now, maybe it doesn't come from Chiron. Maybe it comes from something else. But we explore and see if it's working. And it's amazing how well Chiron works when you apply it. Now, this evidence that works when we apply it does not give us the more rigorous, strict evidence that we get from the database. But if we apply the ideas and they don't work, that really tremendously weakens our whole theory, almost basically destroys it. It has to work when we apply it. And this is also the fun of it and the excitement using the ideas. So what we found in the research is that these singers who have this incredible voice and presence, not even always that they're gifted, but they have this, not that they have like the best voice in the world, but typically there's some kind of intonation, some kind of quality, something in the way that they express themselves that's so electrifying, even though they're delivering it in a modest way. So this fits Renata Baldi. So we'll look at her 11 vibration, because that's the vibration it shows up in, and it's there. It's there in 11 and 99, because it'll always show up in a higher overtone of the vibration when there's a special talent, because it's these high vibrations, these overtones, where the special, unique effects really come through. So, excuse me, to give you a little background about Renata Baldi, she was an opera singer recently, in modern times. We could say late 20th century. I'm not sure when her career started dying out exactly. We can Google that. But she and Maria Callas were the two leading female opera singers of the time, kind of put up against each other as competitors. They had a little bit different styles and so on. Arturo Toscanini said that Tebaldi had the voice of an angel, which a lot of people would certainly agree with. So let's just look at her 11 vibe chart and also her 99. Here's Renata Tebaldi's 11 vibe chart. And Chiron is conjunct Uranus. We allow a 16-degree orb. This has a 6-degree orb, so it's solidly there. And Chiron is square Mars. So yeah, Chiron's there. It's not like overpoweringly involved in patterns, but it is making two aspects that looks fairly impressive, somewhat reasonable. We can look at her 99 vibration, and oh my goodness, that really is stunning. She has Sun, Moon, and Chiron conjunct with a 7-degree orb, and in vibrational astrology, 3 planets conjunct with a 7-degree orb, extremely powerful. The lights, both her Sun and Moon are with Chiron. That is going to give the capacity. We're talking about 11 times 9. This is going to give us sweetness, because 9 times 11 gives the sweet dynamic flow. The Sun and Moon, the presence, the emotion, the depth. And as if that's not enough, it's opposition Venus. All 3 of them have thick lines opposition Venus to bring the beauty out. Voice of an angel. Wow. So it works. When we apply the ideas, we work. I'm just giving this as an example to illustrate how you would apply these ideas and see if they make sense, if they're consistent with the previous findings, that Chiron in 11 vibration gives the ability to have this powerful effect, energizing effect through the spirit, the electricity, you can feel the enthusiasm, the rawness. Uranus gives this rawness in the performance. And Chiron gives the rawness of Uranus with the simplicity and elegance and purity of Saturn, voice of an angel. Purity, electrifying. So, with Sun, Moon, and Venus. So, we apply the ideas and see if they make sense. It's another step in the evidence-based practice. Take what we get from the research, use it in charts, see if it makes sense. Okay, so that's just to illustrate. We've done dozens and dozens and dozens, plus hundreds of clients among different vibrational astrologers using these ideas to see if they work, and they do. Now, interestingly, does the idea of woundedness work with Baldi? And it does. She has clear, what we could call wounding. So here's a quote from a Wikipedia article on her. Born in Pesaro, Italy, she's Italian. Baldi was the daughter of cellist Teobaldo Baldi and Giuseppina Barbieri, a nurse. Her parents separated from her birth, separated before her birth. There's that separation. It seems that it appears from working with clients that people whose parents divorced at a very early age, in this case even before birth separation, that it seems to occur with Chiron, with certain planets and certain conditions. Not always, but what we're going to see with Baldi is when you go to her natal chart, let's go back to her birth chart, she has a T-square, Saturn, Pluto, and Chiron. And you see all the lines are thick, it's pretty tight. Saturn, Pluto, invariably there's some kind of deprivation or loss. And that deprivation or loss sometimes makes the person stronger, more focused, more resilient, more determined. Nothing can stop them, because when your life is stripped, you might give up, you might become very focused, very very self-reliant. Obviously you're not la-di-da-di just floating through life in a spoiled kind of manner, so to speak. So in her case, it makes sense. But if you start using Chiron, there's the wounding. Chiron with wounding doesn't work. With certain planets, in certain vibrations, you'll see that tendency. But it's not universal. So in this case, with Saturn, Pluto, yes, that is something we often see happen. And not only that, in her case, going back to our PowerPoint, not only is there the separation of the parents before birth, but she stricken with polio at the age of 3. So there's another, situation that's not the typical kinds of challenges most of us have, a little more severe. Now, that's just to show you can apply the ideas, see if they work. Very important step in an evidence-based practice. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's what we want to do. We want to do charts of clients. It has to work there. Now I'm going to show you a new research study. I want to answer this question. Does Chiron have anything to do with healing? Almost every astrologer works with Chiron says it does. Comes from the myth of Chiron, etc. But they apply it and it seems to work. Now, in the first video in the series, I explained how, yes, it's quite possible that having this force of Uranus come through this electric circuit, it's almost the definition of energy healing. This circuitry is coming through you. Maybe in some particular vibrations it would happen. So we can test this idea. Not just wait till we have a client or wait around and look and ask other people. That's good to do as well, but we can go in and find out straight away. In the Sirius 4.0 software, we can bring up the charts of energy healers and see what they have. In fact, I'll show you how it's done very quickly. What you do, you go into New. I'm going to just do this quickly. You can play this over and pause it. You go into New, Add New Natal Chart. Click on Flexible Search up here. Click on Select ADB Category right over here. And then, let me drag this down to the area I'm capturing for this video. And then you go to Vocation, and you'll see Healing Fields, and you'll see specifically Energy Field Healer. So we selected that. I just wanted to show you the idea. And when you do that, you will get a listing of 12 people with A or AA data. If you don't restrict to A and AA, there were 17. 12 people with A or AA. Since we had so few, I selected A or AA. When we have hundreds, for what we're researching, we'll usually just do AA only. In vibrational astrology, you have to have really good, accurate birth times. But here we have so few, I said, okay, we'll look at A as well. A and AA accuracy data. And here's what we found. There were 7 people. Actually, there were 12 people. These 5 that I've highlighted in blue, these 2 I've highlighted in gray, and then 5 others. Judy Hall, Susie Harvey, Evelyn Roberts, Lynn Rodden, and Pete Watson. Why did I not include them in the research, even though they were among the 12 people? The answer is that when I read the biography, I didn't see a lot of emphasis on energy healing. Even though they were classified as energy healers, I want really, really pure cases. I'd rather have fewer cases. Even if I have only 2 or 3, I want to know that these people are energy healers, that this is really conspicuous. This is this extreme case sampling procedure that we do. We want really clear cases. And these 5, when I read the biography, I thought to myself, these people are energy healers. I mean, it's somewhat subjective. You might cut off at slightly different points, but that's okay. The point is, I make that decision before I look at the charts, and actually it's fairly clear cut. I think that if you were to go through it, you would conclude pretty close to the same thing. These 5 are energy healers. These 2, the descriptions mention the energy healing or something close to it. I'm not quite as sure of these 2, so I put them as not as demanding that they must have. These 5 I'm relying on. They're energy healers. If Chiron can do energy healing, I'm looking for some consistent formula. I'm not saying, well, this one has Sun and Moon, and this one has Mars and Jupiter, and this one has it here, and this one's a trine, and this one, it's in the 12th house. In the research we do, we're looking for something simple, clear, and sharp, because the astrology actually works, and these vibrations have very definite and clear results. So we're more demanding in this kind of way, and we find that it works. Now, you may have a different idea, but that's what we do in vibrational astrology research. We think that there are very clear, specific vibrations that get very clear, specific results. And there can be more than 1 or 2 things that lead to a result, and it doesn't have to work 100% of the time, but it will work in the vast majority of times. That's how we make all of our discoveries. So with only 5 people, I'm looking for a very clear and consistent formula with Chiron for all 5. And, I'm thinking maybe 8 vibration, because it's a basic driving force, and especially an inner 8, like 64, 256. I'm thinking maybe 11 will work for healers too, although that'd be a little weird. Works for musicians and healers, but it is moving and dynamic. I don't know what other, but maybe a 7 or 77, because 77 combines 7 and 11. Maybe 7 because it's quiet. So I have a few ideas of vibrations that work. I'm not looking at 5 vibration, 23 vibration, 29, 31, etc. Because theoretically, I just don't think that they're going to work. I don't really think 19 would work. Maybe 17, So I'm just going to look at certain vibrations to see if there's something consistent, and there is something consistent. So what that means is we're building a model. We found something that is consistent, that works, that suggests that yes, Chiron can give healing, specifically energy healing. Not someone who's like a nutritionist and they just, basically know the vitamins and minerals and they assess something. That's not Chiron. Chiron is this channeling of this vibrancy. So energy healing is the kind of healing. So when we say Chiron is the healer, and then people say, oh, see that? She's a nurse. Oh, see that? She's a doctor. Oh, see that? She's a dentist. Oh, see that? She takes care of, lost animals and, pet rescue. I mean, wow. I mean, she has a lot of children. She teaches. You can extend this healing so it works for almost anybody. And what we're saying in vibrational astrology is we're seeing something very specific. It's energy healing. That's what Chiron is. And so these are the 5 people. And let's look at them. One of them was an actor, Maurizio Arena, Italian actor. He became an energy healer, and he used his hands. There's pictures of him with his hands up. He does some kind of energy healing. David Bray is a Hawaiian-American kahuna healer. He was not born in a kahuna family. It's often passed down through the family, but he was very motivated and persisted and was able to get trained as a kahuna healer. Barbara Brennan, very well-known spiritual teacher and energy healer. She's the author of several books. Finbarry Nolan, an Irish healer, practices by touch, so he's clearly hands-on healer. And Greg Shulkin, a psychic healer who people say has the gift of healing, and he's not a Filipino, but he does Philippine psychosurgery. So, and these other 2 people, not as obvious to me that they do like a hands-on energetic work. One is Gwen Stoney, an astrologer. It said in the biography that she's modest, so people didn't know she had the healing gift and was a Reiki healer. Well, I don't know if this was written by a friend who got some massages from her, or whether she really has a conspicuous, power. A lot of people have, learned Reiki. To what extent, I don't know. So I wasn't as sure about that. Wasn't her primary thing. And this one I'm even less sure of. Jose Ortiz Pino, an American shaman. He lived in New Mexico. Well, did he do touch? Did he do energy healing, or did he get messages, insights, visions into other realms and dimensions? What is he doing? If he's not specifically doing a Chiron kind of thing, of this hands-on healing, then it's really not Chiron. Shaman, I'm expecting more of like a Uranus, Neptune, maybe Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. We can study shamans, but each thing is different. What we found in the astrology is there's not these broad categories. The energy does something very specific. So I wasn't even sure I wanted to include him at all, but I figured maybe. And then there are 5 others. There was really no big emphasis on healing, even though they were categorized as energy field healers. Judy Hall, Susie Harvey, Evelyn Roberts, Lynn Rodden, Pete Watson. I mean, a lot of us are involved in energy healing in mild extents. So it wasn't, I don't know, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but I didn't see a big emphasis. So let's look at the charts. What do we find? What we find is, yes, there is a consistent theme. So it does appear that Chiron can become involved in energy healing, specifically energy healing. And what vibration is it? 64 and 256. So whereas music is 11 vibration, and we've seen that over and over again for a long time, music and 11 vibration. It's been established over and over again with lots of different research. But for energy healing, basic driving inner motivation. The hard driving forces deep within us, 64 and 256, which makes sense because this is not at a personality level. This is at a very specific level of the way the person thinks and operates and functions. 64 and 256. And it's either an aspect pattern or a midpoint pattern. We call these supersymmetry patterns. With Chiron, with 2 of these 5 planets, Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. If it's an aspect pattern, Chiron and at least 2 of these planets are aspected to each other. If it's a midpoint pattern, there are going to be 2 midpoint structures involving Chiron and 3 of these planets, what we call supersymmetry. They're interlocking midpoint patterns. And that's what all 5 of them have. Let's look at it real quickly so you can see them. Let's take Maurizio Arena, and he has a supersymmetry pattern in 64 vibe. And it involves Chiron, Mars, Uranus, and Neptune. So let's go into the software. Let's pull up his 64 vibration chart. There it is. Let's pull up the midpoint structures, and let's pull up a pop-up wheel so we can get a visualization of it. What's happening is his Chiron over here at 10 Scorpio is opposition the midpoint of Mars and Uranus. And Neptune down here at 10 Aquarius is at the midpoint of Chiron and Mars. So you can look at it like this. Neptune is at the midpoint of Chiron and Mars. Then you add one more planet, Uranus. You only have to add one more, and you get another midpoint structure. Chiron at Mars, Uranus. So Mars and Chiron are in both midpoint structures. Interlocking midpoint structures involving Chiron and 2 of those 5 planets. Now that may not look super overwhelming to you, but in vibrational astrology, this is a fundamental, important energy pattern. And our interpretation of it is that it gives him the ability to get this electric charge flowing through him in this direct way. Mars, Uranus, Neptune with Chiron, and it comes out in that way. He was also, an actor that would help with his acting as well. But this is the thing that all of the healers have. Now, this is amazing. David Bray, the next person in our thing, in our list of 5 people, has the same exact midpoint configuration of Chiron at Mars, Uranus, in the same vibe. Same midpoint structure, Chiron at the Mars, Uranus midpoint. Let's look at it for David Bray. I'll pull up the midpoints and the pop-up wheel. And what we see here is Chiron. Let's see, Chiron wasn't in there. Let me add Chiron to this. Okay, so now we have the Chiron midpoint structure. And let me pull up that pop-up wheel. I didn't see this Chiron thing there, so I just went into the settings and added it. And there it is, Chiron's at the Mars-Uranus midpoint. Chiron over here at 25 Pisces is conjunct the midpoint of Mars up here and Uranus. One of them is opposition, the other is conjunction. We don't make much distinction in vibrational astrology. Same exact midpoint structure in the same vibration. And his Mars is at the Pluto-Chiron midpoint. Mars appears at the Pluto-Chiron midpoint, which means we've added one more planet, Pluto, and we get another midpoint structure. So this is what we call a string. Uranus, Chiron, Mars, and Pluto are all equally spaced. Extremely similar to David Bray. Extremely similar. Same midpoint, Chiron at Mars, Uranus, and then another midpoint structure. That's a supersymmetry pattern where we add one more planet. For Arena, it was Neptune, and for Bray, it's Pluto. We add one more planet. So going back to our PowerPoint, they both have the supersymmetry pattern of Chiron with 3 of these planets. For Arena, it's with Mars, Uranus and Neptune, Mars, Uranus, and Neptune. And for Bray, it's Mars, Uranus, and Pluto. Extremely similar planetary configurations. This could actually be the real planetary configuration related to energy healing. Wow. So let's look at Barbara Brennan, very well-known spiritual teacher and energy healer. She writes books about it. She gives workshops on it. In her case, it's in 256 vibration. Again with Mars. All three have Mars and Uranus. So here it's Mars and Uranus again with Chiron, only with her, there is a midpoint structure. Uranus is at the Mars-Chiron midpoint, but they're also in a grand trine as well. So let's go to 256. It looks like it can happen in either 64 or 256 vibration. So let's go to Barbara Brennan and go to her 256 vibration chart. And you see the grand trine, Mars, Uranus, Chiron. And there's a midpoint structure reinforcing it. So there's the three-planet pattern. Especially Mars and Uranus get frequently involved in the energy healers. Quite fascinating that we have similar planetary configurations. What this is showing is that Chiron, in a certain vibrations with certain planets, gives the potential for energy healing. Why energy healing? Because Chiron's healing? It's not so much because Chiron equals healing. It's because Chiron takes this electrical live force and puts it through a circuit, and that can give healing power, especially in these vibrations with these planets. So in usual astrology, we have these images like Chiron, it's the wounded healer, I see healing, and it's just this kind of like different stories. We're seeing like a visualization, these archetypal images. Those archetypal images do develop, but the astrology is actually working through forces. When you see it, the force at work that creates the archetype, your interpretation is so much clearer, so much more direct, fits what's actually happening, and leads to these findings in the research. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Let's look at the next one, Finberry Nolan. Now he has Chiron, Neptune, and Pluto in a T-square. So there's the planets, Chiron with two of these, Neptune and Pluto, in a T-square. He also has some additional planets involved, but it's the Chiron, Neptune, Pluto that meets our requirement. Adding in additional planets, I say here optional, Sun and Jupiter can add strength. Well, he's got an additional one. And then in 64 vibration, he has it as well. Chiron, Mars, Neptune. So he has a Chiron, Mars, Neptune aspect pattern in 64 and a Chiron, Neptune, Pluto in 256. So he's really got it. Let's look at both of them. Chiron, Mars, Neptune in 64. So let's go down to him, 64 vibration, and there is Chiron at 22 Gemini, almost 23 Gemini, and you see the strong opposition lines to Mars and Neptune. So the Chiron, Neptune extremely strong, and the Chiron, Mars is there as well. Mars, Neptune, Chiron in 64 vibe. He's got some other Chiron things going on as well, but there's the basic configuration. Mars, Neptune, Chiron. So it's Chiron. Let's look at that formula again. Chiron with Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, aspecting at least two of those. And he's got it in 256 vibration as well. Let me look at that and see if that's all within orb. Chiron at 1 Aquarius is conjunct Neptune and opposition Pluto. The Chiron Pluto is a little bit weak. You see it's a thin line. That's not as impressive as what we saw in 64 vibe, but it's reinforcing it as well. And we see additional aspects. Chiron, there's a square to Mercury, and basically the square to Mercury. So there's additional things. I'm just showing you the configurations are there, and they're very, very strong. Let's do the fifth one and see how that looks. Greg Shulkin, his is in, he has it in 256 vibe. Excuse me. Uranus, Chiron, Mars. Now that I'm going over this again, it's really even more amazing. Mars, Uranus, Chiron. Is that really true? Let's look at this. Incredibly consistent. It takes a while to, digest what we're observing. And I've just done this research. So Greg Shulkin, 256 vibe. So here's Shulkin. Here's his 256 vibe. And he's got Mars, Uranus, Chiron also in 256 vibe. The Mars Chiron's a little bit weak, but it's there. Mars, Uranus, Chiron. Same three planets showing up over and over and over again in 64 vibe or 256 vibe. Here it's 256 vibe. And we also have a note that in 64 vibe, the Mars, Uranus, and Chiron form a midpoint structure. And then there's another one involving Jupiter, Saturn, Chiron. But Jupiter is not essential. It's optional. So the really clear, strong one's 256 with supporting stuff in 64. Now, Gwen Stoney, I wasn't sure if she's really a Reiki healer or is she really hands-on healer. Oh yeah, it appears that she is. She's got huge amount of stuff. Her 256 vibe, she's got a Saturn, Uranus, Chiron T-square. And she has Uranus, Neptune, and Chiron in 8 vibration aspects. Oh my God. So she's got huge 256 vibe. Let's take a quick look at it. Go down to Stoney, 256. There's the T-square Chiron, Uranus, Saturn. That square is weak, but it is there. Those 3 aspects. And then she also has Chiron. Let me see. What do I say in my notes? She also has Uranus, Neptune, Chiron. Uranus, Neptune, Chiron. Yes, she does. There's so many red lines, it's not obvious. But Uranus and Neptune are 2 of the planets, and they're aspected. In fact, that one's a little bit stronger. So she has two 3-planet patterns. They overlap. Chiron with Uranus, also connected to Neptune, and also connected to Saturn. Saturn, Neptune's out of orb. Otherwise, it'd be a 4-planet configuration. So it's 2 3-planet combinations. She's got 2 of them in the 256 vibration, and evidently she's got something in 64 vibe as well. And in my notes, I say she's got a supersymmetry pattern. Oh my God, a huge one. Uranus is at Mars, Chiron. Chiron's at Saturn, Uranus. That shares the Chiron and Uranus. And Chiron's also at Mars, Pluto. It's a huge supersymmetry pattern. So we don't need to go through. You got the idea. But if we look at her midpoint structures, you're going to see all these midpoint structures. Chiron at Saturn, Uranus. And Uranus at Mars, Chiron. There's that Mars, Uranus, Chiron. Seems to be a favorite. Uranus at Mars, Chiron, and Chiron at Saturn, Uranus. That's a supersymmetry. And then the Mars, Pluto is also supersymmetry because there's 2 planets in common with this. Mars and Chiron. Mars and Chiron. Wow. She's got it extremely strong. I would say that biography is accurate. She does have the gift of healing. And it's interesting, it said she was modest because Chiron tends to be modest. It's amazing. Chiron is modest. It really doesn't want all this, oh, I'm an energy healer, well, groovy, cool. No. It's just like a real thing, man. So, now, Jose Ortiz Pino, who I was really not sure he had it, he does not have the hands-on healing configuration. Closest thing he has is Chiron, is at Sun, Saturn. This is not... Chiron's at Saturn-Neptune midpoint. That fits. But he doesn't have supersymmetry. So he's a shaman. He's not primarily doing hands-on healing. He's seeing into things. He's interpreting. He's doing that. That's the primary thing. If he had the hands-on healing, meaning that he's with the people and having these experiences, he would do more of that. But apparently, that's not what he's oriented to. Everybody has special gifts and special ways. So this is the research that shows that the model works, that it does appear that we're understanding how Chiron can become involved in healing. And what we're learning is it's a specific healing. It's energy healing. Probably nothing else. It's energy healing, and specifically 64 and 256 vibe, especially with Mars, Uranus, also with Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, to a lesser extent with Sun and Jupiter, in these aspects and supersymmetry patterns, giving that attunement that can just, it's like you're just able to zoom, that energy is coming through you. You got it. Of course, it requires more than planetary configuration, lifestyle, attention, etc. But it's a potential that can be developed. So this is exciting. We're seeing what Chiron does, how it gets expressed in different vibrations and with different planets. Now, let's continue this in the next video. I think the next video will be we've got a whole other section to do here. There's going to be at least one more video in this series of videos. I'm at 37 minutes. Let's stop here, and in part 3, we're going to go into the wounding aspect in more detail. So part 3 is going to be Chiron and wounding. I talked about that in part 1, but we're going to see examples of it and how it works out. Okay, my friends, I'll see you in part 3 of this series.